Hi, I'm Miss Powell. I am the English teacher at this campus, and I am going to share a lesson with you dealing with reading and reading comprehension skills. Basically, what we do when we draw conclusions, when we make inferences based on what we read, and what we see on this STAR test. A lot of the reading is going to be nonfiction. So let's start with that. Reading nonfiction. What are the skills we need to understand what we read? Our objectives today, as we draw some conclusions, we're going to be able to draw complex conclusions from a nonfiction text. When we make inferences, it's an educated guess we make based upon what we read or observe from the environment or the text. I asked what we do at Winfrey. Well, reading is what we do here at Winfrey. So let's get started. What inferences can we make from the passages that we read here? Ted led Horatio out of the stable and blinked, her eyes at the brightness outside. The sun must have come out while she saddled him. What a relief. After 3 days, it felt glorious to feel its warmth again. As she placed her foot in the stirrup and grasped the saddle horn, Tara realized that this would probably be their last evening ride this summer, since she would start a new job delivering pizzas tomorrow. Wouldn't it be nice if she could ride Horatio to deliver the pizzas instead of driving a clunky old car? Horatio tossed his head as if to agree with her. He always seemed to understand her. Which clue tells you about what animal Horatio is? Well, A says she let Horatio out. B, while she saddled him. C, their last evening ride. D, instead of driving her clunky old car. Well, I think out of all of them, it would be B, while she saddled him. Yeah, their last evening ride could give us some kind of idea, but Horatio could be a friend of hers. So, yeah, I would say it's B. While she saddled him, does give us the indication that this is a horse. What has happened for 3 days? Tara has been inside. B, the weather has been stormy. C, the sky has been cloudy. Or D, Horatio has not been feeling well. Well, we always look back at the passage to give us some ideas. And we're told that it was a relief when she saw the sun. Um, she said after 3 days, it felt glorious to feel its warmth again. So we think it's been very cloudy. We don't know if there has been rain or storms, but we do know that she hasn't been able to see the sun. So yeah, it's going to have to be C. The sky has been cloudy. Which statement about Tara is supported by the clues in the text? She's relieved that the summer is almost over. Well, there's no indication in this text whether summer is just beginning or whether it's over. She loves pizza. Well, we don't know that. She delivers pizza, but we don't know her feeling about pizza. She's excited about her new job. She's not giving us that impression. She doesn't like her car. Now, that's one thing that we can say is probably true. She'd rather ride Horatio to deliver the pizza than she would to drive her clunky old car. So it's a clunky old car. So no, she doesn't like the car a lot. Okay. Which statement about Tara's new job is supported by clues in the text? She will be working in the evenings. B, the job does not pay a lot of money. C, the job is located near the stable. D, Tara cannot drive to her job. Well, it is a clunky old car, but we're not given the impression that she's not able to drive the car to her job. It's delivering pizza, but we don't know how much she's getting paid for that. So we don't know. We don't know how much they pay at that pizza place. But we do know that she will be working in the evenings because this is the last evening ride with her horse before she starts the new job. How does Horatio feel about Tara in the passage? A, he likes to be with her. B, he is tired of their evening rides. C, he is nervous around her. D, he misses her. Well, we don't give or get any impression about their relationship other than very positive. We're told that he nods his head or tossed his head as if to agree. He always seems to understand her. So he likes to be with her, I'd say. So it is A. This next story, one of the most amazing stories of World War I, is the Christmas truce of 1914. After months of brutal trench warfare, some German soldiers decided to stop firing at the British on Christmas Eve and instead spent the evening singing carols. In the morning, a few Germans ventured across no man's land to offer a temporary ceasefire in honor of Christmas. That day, countless enemy soldiers ate together, played soccer, and even exchanged gifts. Unfortunately, after commanders on both sides learned what happened, no more truce occurred for the rest of the war. Which clue tells you why soldiers probably wanted to stop fighting for Christmas? Well, we're told A, one of the most amazing stories. Well, that's certainly an attention getter, but it's not a reason why they would want to stop fighting. But B is a good choice and probably the best of all. After months of brutal trench warfare, some Germans decided to stop firing. So, yeah, it is B, I would say. Yeah, they were tired of this months of this trench warfare. Okay, question 7. Which statement about the German soldiers is supported by the text? They wanted to end the war with Britain. They did not respect their commanders. They had planned the truce for a long time. They were willing to take a risk for peace. Well, out of all of this, all of these choices, the only one that is actually supported in the text would be D. They're willing to take a risk for peace. We're told that they crossed no man's land. And if we know anything about history, we know that in World War I, no man's land was basically the front line. It was right where the two enemies were faced off shooting at each other. So if you were crossing no man's land, you were walking right into the fire, the cannon fire, the rifle fire, the machine gun fire. So yeah, they were willing to take a risk because they wanted peace for that night. Okay, number 8. What must have happened immediately after the Germans offered a truce? The British refused to accept the truce, A. B. The Germans began singing carols. C. Commanders discovered the truce. D. The British agreed not to fight that day. Well, out of all of them, all of these choices, I think D is the best choice because we're told after they ventured across, um, the two sides started or decided to um, eat together, play soccer together, exchange gifts. So, yeah, they were willing and they did follow along with the suggestions of the Germans. Why is the most likely reason no more truce occurred after 1914? Okay, and question number 9, the soldiers had no more food and gifts. B, no one wanted to cross no man's land. C, commanders would not allow any truce. The war ended soon after the truce. Well, at that time, the soldiers had no idea when the truce was going to end. Um, they were willing to cross no man's land once, so why not? Why not again? And I don't think they were totally out of food, may have been out of gifts, but not out of food. I think it's the commanders would not allow any truce because we're told in the last sentence, unfortunately, after commanders on both sides learned what happened, no truce occurred for the rest of the war. And number 10, which statement about the German and British soldiers is supported by the text? They shared many of the same interests. They did not get along well. They could not communicate with each other. They were friends before the war. Well, we don't have any idea that these guys knew each other before the war, so we can rule out D. We can cross out C, they could not communicate with each other. They communicated well enough to understand that we're having a truce today and that we're going to get along. A or B, they did not get along well. Well, you don't play soccer with someone you don't get along well with. You don't give gifts to someone you don't get along well with. And you don't eat with someone you don't get along well with. So, A, yeah, they shared many of the same interests. They both liked soccer. They both enjoyed probably some of the same foods. And yeah, they shared quite a few of the same interests. And that made it seem reasonable not to carry on with the war. You did well. Let's see what else we can find out. But first, let's see how well you did. Okay, I would say 1 is B, 2 is C, 3 is D, 4 is A, 5 is A, 6 is B, 7 is D, 8 is D, 9 is C, 10 is A. So let's see if we can do one that you can do on your own. Our next reading passage deals with a very, very different situation. How different are the schools in Japan from the schools in the United States? Well, we're going to read an article dealing with 8 differences between Japanese and American middle schools that a young girl notices when she is attending a Japanese school after having attended a school in New Mexico. But let's see what we can find out. How are those schools different? Let's watch this little video and find out some of the different school rules that they have in Japan that we would find a little ridiculous over here.
We all know that schools have rules that students and staff must abide by. In your school, you likely had various rules on how you could behave and what to wear. Yet we bet your school pales in comparison to some of the regulations that Japanese students and teachers have to go up against. Imagine having your underwear inspected or being told you couldn't date someone, all by school officials. Well, these are the sorts of things Japanese students deal with every day, and we've got a bunch of others to share with you. Before our lesson starts, be sure to subscribe to The Richest. Please leave questions and comments until the end, and we'll get the lesson started as soon as everyone is seated. Dress code. There's nothing strange about having a dress code. Many schools have them. However, when it comes to Japan, there are all sorts of extra rules governing that school outfit. For instance, you can wear a sweater over your school uniform, but it can only be a muted color like black, navy blue, or tan. Also, don't think you can just wear that sweater to and from school. Many Japanese schools don't want their kids wearing sweaters in public because it can make them look sloppy. So, pack a jacket. I see London, I see France. On the topic of school uniforms, let's get more specific. Sure, skirts have to be certain lengths, Ties need to be done right, and any sweaters you decide to wear must be an approved color. But then there's your underwear. Yes, at some schools, they have rules governing underwear. According to some students, it's not uncommon to have school officials check to make sure your tighty-whities are white or cream colored and not black, red, or some other color. We don't think that would fly in the US. Cleaning up. Where you went to school, cleanup was likely left to the professionals, the janitors. Sure, students were expected to clean up the little messes they made, but can you imagine having to mop the floors and clean the hallways? Well, that's what kids in Japan schools do. Yup, as part of the school rules, children take part in activities most of us associate with the janitor. Officials say it teaches the kids the value of cleanliness and makes them more invested in the well-being of the school. Dating. Apparently, in Japan, there are rules in many schools that forbid students from having a girlfriend or boyfriend. No, they aren't against the concept of love. It's just that officials view dating and relationships as a huge distraction from the purpose of school, learning. That's right, in Japan, students are apparently encouraged to love math, science, and language studies. Human love can wait. Jobless. One thing that's pretty common for many students in North America is that they have a job after school or on the weekends. After all, a part-time job teaches values and also gives you a little pocket money to buy that iPhone or new pair of shoes. Not in Japan. Again, many schools prohibit students from holding jobs after school. The reason? Like love and relationships, a job is a distraction that draws the student's attention away from the priority of learning. Lucky. Many cultures around the world get pretty serious when it comes to superstitions. The Japanese are no different. In Japanese culture, luck is an important aspect. After all, everyone wants to have good luck. Even students want in on the action, and some will wear bracelets meant to give good luck. Yet schools do have rules which state only one good luck bracelet can be worn. After all, if you were to wear 2 or 3, well, that would just be cheating. Curfew. It's crazy how much influence and power the schools have over Japanese students. We've already told you about restrictions on relationships and after-school jobs. But what about curfew? While that's something that's usually set by our parents, Japanese students are expected to be home no later than 10 p.m. That's right, even after classes are done, the school is still influencing students' lives with a curfew. Defense. Japan doesn't have the terrible history of school violence that the US has, but that doesn't mean they are defenseless. To protect students from armed intruders, Japanese schools have reintroduced a medieval weapon, the sasumata. Heading into a school, there's a good chance you may see some of these hanging on the wall. This samurai-era weapon is basically a long pole that is designed to keep an intruder at arm's length and restrain them. School officials are trained on a modern version of the weapon, so they can use it if the need ever arises. Dating 2.0. Dating rules aren't just for students. Yes, even teachers have limits of what they can or can't do. For instance, one teacher not familiar with customs in Japanese schools got a rather severe scolding from her fellow faculty members after going out for dinner with a coworker. The teacher thought it would be a great way to learn more Japanese language skills. However, the other teachers deemed it a date with a fellow coworker, something many schools have a rule against. Hair color. Related to the whole school uniform rule, Japanese students have to follow rather strict rules about their hair. Sure, boys and girls have to maintain appropriate lengths, but color is a whole other issue. Dyeing your hair crazy colors is almost always off limits. However, even if your hair is naturally not dark enough, some schools have been known to order you to dye it darker. Yes, we're not making that up. Dark hair is favored, and if yours is too light, then it's not unheard of that school officials will tell you to darken it. Did you find any of these rules particularly strange or over the top? Tell us what you think in the comments, and be sure to subscribe to The Richest while you're at it. We guess that's it for class today, so we'll hope to see you at our next video. Bye for now.
Okay.
We all know that schools have rules that students and staff.
There we go. Yeah, we've learned some interesting things here. So let's look at this article written by a young American girl who went to a Japanese middle school. But we're going to use an actual star reading assignment when we do. And this little story was taken off a star test. So let's go ahead. Let's see what we can determine. 8 differences between Japanese and American middle school. 8th grade student Alicia Figueroa from Farmington Middle School in New Mexico just returned from Japan after participating in a student exchange program. She lived with 8th grade student Kamiko and her family in Kaizu, a typical Japanese suburb. She attended middle school every day alongside Kamiko to experience what it was like to live a normal life. Although she can't speak for all middle schools, she shares her observation here about the differences between the Japanese and the American middle school she has attended. Number one, lunch. With 1 hour devoted to lunch, it was no rush. We were given 30 minutes just to eat, not 30 minutes total. Not hurried or hasty. We all shared responsibilities, such as going to the kitchen to pick up hot meals, serving classmates, and returning the real non disposable dishes and silverware back to the kitchen after collecting and rinsing them. Everyone seemed received the same healthy meal that provided real food, as in fresh fish fillet, not frozen fish stick, as in fruit, not fruit snack. Meals usually included meat or fish, rice or noodles, and vegetables. The atmosphere was calming rather than chaotic because students conversed quietly. Different. We had more responsibilities and healthier food, but less rush, less chaos, and less waste. So it was worth it. Shoes. Upon entering school, students change out of their outdoor shoes to their indoor shoes and store them in a cubby at the entrance. In addition, when you enter a bathroom, you change into a set of bathroom slippers. It is deeply ingrained in Japanese culture to keep indoor spaces clean by changing shoes at the entrance to schools, homes, and elsewhere. Three, janitor. What shall I say about the janitor? How about there is no janitor? That's right. The students and teachers clean the school. A half hour is set aside each day for everybody to simultaneously tackle all the chores a janitor would normally do. The good part is that wacky music plays over the speakers. You can at least clean with your friends, and it makes kids try to clean the school cleaner in the first place. Number four, school participation. After school, nearly every student stays to participate in a club, activity, or team sport. This combined with the time set aside for cleaning earlier and a long lunch makes for a very long school day that lasts until late afternoon or early evening. Plus, there's lots of homework. Also, some kids go to cram to, to study for high school entrance exams. Oh my. Number five, uniforms. Middle school is when students start wearing the iconic Japanese school uniform. It consists of a fancy dark blazer bearing the school crest that goes over a white dress shirt and necktie or frilly bow tie. Girls wear sailor shirts and plaid skirts. Boys sometimes wear sweater vests, all quite fancy. Number six, respect for teachers. Teachers get the respect they deserve in Japan. First thing in the morning, students bow to the teachers, as well as throughout the day. Students don't talk back. Seven, time off. The school year starts in April and runs through March. There is no long summer break. During time off, students often participate in school activities or do school work. Number eight, transportation. So many kids ride their bikes to school, even if they live miles away, or they walk or take public transportation because there are no school buses. Before and after school, kids on their bikes feel the streets and sidewalks. Okay, so different. And let me say this, you can find the handouts if you are not an in person student in the Google Docs in this lesson. These would be part of the lesson. It would be the docs that are due when you turn in the lesson. If you were a in-person student, of course, you've got the handouts and you can answer the questions and follow along with those. Okay. And yes, I am going to let you answer the questions on your own. And this, of course, will be your formative assessment. But let's say you are told to read closely and cite textual evidence. As you answer the following question, keep in mind that Alicia attended a typical Japanese public school and typical American public school. So, in number one, the reader can infer that Alicia is used to a rushed, noisy lunch period at her school back home. Quote at least two sentences from the text that support this inference. Well, just a little hint here. I would look in lunch, her little section, number one, and what does she say about 30 minutes as opposed to an hour? Okay, and number two, as you read Alicia's comments about the school lunch program in Japan, what do you think she was implying about the length of time, type of food, and type of dishware used in most American school lunch programs? Hey, she talks about real food. She talks about actual real uh, silverware, real plates. What is she saying about American schools here? Number three, Alicia stated we had more responsibilities and healthier food, but less rush, less chaos, and less waste. So worth it. What does she mean, so worth it? What is important to her? What made this school lunch special, whereas the American lunch was not quite what she would like to have done? Okay, the last sentence of the section, school participation, is oh my. What is Alicia implying? And let me ask you, after, say it's 5, 6 o'clock in the evening, you've been at school since 7 in the morning, would you be willing to go to a cram school to study for your high school exams? Yeah, I think what is she saying about that? Okay, and number five, how do Japanese students show their teacher respect? What does she think of this? Okay, and she tells us exactly what she thinks of it. What does she say about the respect the teachers get in Japan? Okay, and number six, how is time off from school different in Japan compared to time off in the United States? How long is their school year? She says something about March to April. How long is that? How long do they get off? What is the difference between transportation to and from middle school in Japan and the US? How do they get to school? What do we see in the morning and in the afternoon all over the streets? And number eight, find something positive that Alicia said about the kids having to clean the school. And she says something about a respect for cleanliness. What does she say? Okay. Okay. So we have got some ideas here about how we draw conclusions, how we make inferences. And yes, go ahead and complete this. And both handouts, both Google Docs, and this will be worth 2 mastery tests. It could be worth a post test, an EOS. It depends on what you need. But go ahead and complete these assignments and submit them to the Google Classroom. And yes, we will give you credit for a well done job today. Thank you. Thank you for letting me share on reading ideas. And yes, just to recap, drawing conclusion, we make assumptions based upon what we read or what we observe. Inferences, we make logical conclusions based on inferences or based on information in the chapter or in the passage. Yeah, thanks again for letting me share. Looking forward to seeing your completed work. Thanks.